In this video, I think I'd like to talk about consciousness, the so-called hard problem of physics. How does the subjective experience of being arise out of the physical properties of the brain? Or indeed, does consciousness actually come from there? Which is a question that isn't always asked if you're in a materialist frame of mind and trying to work out the physiology, the biology and the physics of how particular combinations of chemicals and neurons firing in the neocortex create the subjective experience of being aware, of being conscious. I've talked in the past about the idea that actually consciousness isn't a phenomenon that is born out of the physical, but that it is the ground of being the world and the experience of being alive that we all share comes before the physical manifestations. The physical manifestations arise out of consciousness, and in that sense consciousness is the ground of our being. But let's try and simplify the question, because it can be very complex when one starts to try to investigate consciousness, not least because the thing that is doing the investigation is the thing that we're trying to investigate. I'm consciously aware of doing my best to navigate these ideas and articulate them in a way that can hopefully make sense, or at least can create more questions and more investigation. And I think that investigation should focus on one's inner world, the investigation into the idea of self, of the I. And in this respect, in my book, No Path to Enlightenment, I make a differentiation between the personal I, the I am, and the impersonal I, which I call the I before I am. So maybe if I just explain what I mean by those two phrases. So the I am is the personal consciousness, the notion we have of ourselves, our individual likes and dislikes, our history. I talked a little bit about this in a previous video called The Illusion of You. So the I am is the consciously aware identity that we all carry with us, and that allows us to function in the world, but it can also bring us suffering. The I before I am is what's left when you strip away all those ideas we have of ourself. Again, this was in a previous video called The Room, where I talk through an exercise in dropping away all those attachments to the I am. And if you can manage to strip away all those definitions and ideas of the I am, then you are just left with a pure conscious awareness. And that awareness is the background to everything that arises within it. And that is an impersonal consciousness. It's not identified as me being aware of the trees or the sun. It comes before identification. I've called it the I before I am. And this is very difficult to conceptualize because the personal consciousness wants to understand and know and define and name and incorporate new ideas into one's own sense of self. In other words, add to oneself. But the I before I am is not a thing that can be incorporated into our understanding. It is the thing that allows the understanding to happen. It comes before any of our ideas of ourself. This impersonal consciousness, the I before I am, is what all the great sages and great teachers and teachings are trying to point towards. It cannot be named or known. It is outside of our understanding, our ideas of individual conscious awareness. We hijack that pure awareness and take it on board as though it is ours and name it as Colin, as a person that functions in the world, that has needs and wants and has joys and sadnesses. And this is the illusion of the self that is both real and unreal. Real in the sense that there's no denying that I'm affected by my environment and the things that happen to me in positive and negative ways, and that affects me emotionally. Illusionary in the sense that if one can drop into that deeper sense of the I before I am, the impersonal consciousness that gives rise to that individual, then one can see through that story. It doesn't negate the story, it doesn't drop the story, but it gives it a different flavour. You can be in the world, but not of the world. You're still, in one sense, at the mercy of life and the emotional roller coaster that we all are subject to based on the events that unfold in our lives. Some things that we look forward to and welcome, and other things that we wish were different. But at the same time, all that is infused by this I before I am, which is a deeper sense of being. The Taoist philosophy would suggest it is the authentic self, the deeper sense of the flow of life, the Tao. And so the impersonal consciousness, the I before I am, and the egoic constructed sense of self, the identity, seem to be complete opposites. But as the Tao Te Ching tries to point out, those opposites are perfectly in harmony, and it's the center where we can live, the center between those two, knowing that one doesn't exist in isolation. It can't. The human mind has to create opposites. Either I am the impersonal consciousness, the I before I am, or I am the identified, constrained personal consciousness. Well, actually, in some sense that can't be logically defined or comprehended, we are both.